Good morning. Good morning. This is Valerie Leonard with Nonprofit Utopia. I want to say thank you so much for joining us. I want to share a few minutes with you just to give you what I'm hearing and what I'm reading about our outlook for 2024 nonprofits. And I encourage you to share your comments. If you're in Facebook, please make sure you post the comments in Facebook. I won't be able to respond to you live, but if you want, you can join us here in Crowdcast, and that way I can see your comments and respond immediately. Otherwise, I will have to come back to the comments in Facebook. And you can join us at crowdcast.io /lower, lowercase e /2020 hyphen nonprofit hyphen outlook. Alrighty, and if you are watching on Facebook Live, I believe that I have included that link in the event that you want to join us here in Crowdcast and make comments, and the same comment for you. If you want to leave comments, you can. I just won't be able to respond until after this video is complete. So I want to go without further ado and share with you why we're here and why you should care about nonprofit and why you should care about our outlook. Whether or not you are someone who works on the front lines or whether or not you are a leader, you would really, really want to care about what's going on in the nonprofit. Specifically, if you're one who charts the course, and when I say chart the course, you're developing strategies, you are positioning your organization for changes in the environment. You might be going through a strategic planning process, or you might have to make some critical decisions that are based on what's going on in the market. So regardless, you need to be on this video watching. And if you're one who makes donations, if you're one who actually regulates and facilitates nonprofits, this is also the place for you. So when we look at what's going on nationally in terms of employment, nonprofits are expected to be and remain a significant part of our employment base. Over the last decade, the nonprofit sector jobs have increased at a rate of 3 times the rate of private sector employment. However, the wages tend to be lower. And as with anything else, there is also a disparity in job advancement and leadership positions for women and minorities. And that brings us to our next point of focus. We're going to continuously hear about more focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI. And that's going to be from the funding community and philanthropy. It's going to come from the government in terms of the policies that they have. We see it very clearly here in the city of Chicago and in the state of Illinois. And obviously, our nonprofits are going to be making the push too, particularly in minority communities. But some of the areas of concern are the fact that many nonprofit board members are led by white males, or the leadership positions are held by white males, and the greatest need tends to be in Black and Brown communities. We will also see an increase in social enterprises and fee for services and earned income. And when we talk about social enterprises, that could be for-profit organizations or nonprofit organizations that have a social mission. And when we talk about fee for services, we're talking about delivering programs where you might have a sliding scale fee to to subsidize your grant income. And when we talk about earned income, we're talking about making sure you have a product or service that you can sell that will generate income over and beyond any grant that you might get. So there's going to be an increased focus on social enterprise coming up in 2020. We'll also see increased collaboration, and that can come in terms of formal partnerships. It can be in terms of informal partnerships, and whether it's formal or informal. And when I talk about informal, I'm talking about something that might be put together by word of mouth or a memorandum of understanding that's not necessarily legally binding. And when I talk about formal partnerships, I'm talking about collaborations that are formed through a contractual arrangement. When we talk about joint ventures, we're looking at two organizations that may have come together to implement a program, but they're actually creating a separate legal entity in order for that to happen. And when we talk about mergers, we're talking about two formal organizations that have agreed to come together as one. So we're going to see a significant increase in all of this collaborative activity as a result of demand from our funding community, as a result of the fact that there is an increase for demand for services, but there are limited resources and limited capacity in order for one organization to do everything that needs to be done. We will see an increase in networking platforms. And when we talk about networking platforms, we're talking about things like Facebook, things like Twitter, but we'll also see an increase in privately run networking platforms. And these are platforms that can bring people together, allow them to collaborate, have conversations in safe spaces. And if you're looking for a safe place to have your conversations, consider nonprofit Utopia, and we'll welcome you, right? And we find that funders are looking for increased accountability and documentation of impact. So this is more than completing quarterly reports or semi-annual reports. They're going to be looking for some evidence that the money that they have given you has been used in a manner that is going to actually make a positive change in the community that you serve and the clients that you serve. They're going to be looking at performance management. And when we talk about performance management, we're looking at the operations of an organization and how efficient those operations are. And when we look at outcomes, we're looking at the changes as they relate to your programs. So all of that stuff combined, if you can bring it together, not only in data format, but in a format in which you can tell a coherent story with human interest, that is really, really helpful. And then if you can also demonstrate through evaluation that your programs and services are making a difference, that would be helpful. And there is an increase in the number of organizations who are saying that they're engaging in evaluation, and there's an increase in the number of funders who actually are requesting that kind of information. So we did a survey, and one of the things that we found is that capacity building is going to remain a priority for funders and nonprofits. So when we talk about capacity building, we're talking about ways to make the organization more impactful, more efficient. And that's usually done through strengthening systems such as fundraising, financial systems, board development, and all of that stuff that needs to happen in the background that will make your programs even more impactful. So we found that funders, as well as what we call intermediaries, and those are people who are the go-between funders and the nonprofits themselves, providing technical assistance and some funding. as well as nonprofit organizations. Everybody seems to be on the same page in terms of agreeing that capacity building is a must do for nonprofits. While individuals remain the largest segment of donors, corporate giving may continue to increase at a higher rate than annual giving. So last year, individual giving fell by 1.7%, while corporate giving increased by 5%. And one of the things that we believe could be driving individual giving, the decline, is the change in the tax law. With the change in the tax law, the president has raised the standard deduction, and it really um, provides a disincentive for people who are below a certain level of income to actually itemize. So that may have impacted some of the individual giving in terms of declining. But if you can make the case for your charity and for your organization, regardless of what the tax structure is, you should be okay. There is a desire for more financial transparency for nonprofits. And when we talk about financial transparency, we're talking about the fact that nonprofits should disclose how much money they make every year, how they're making it, whether it's through the government, whether it's through the private sector, whether it's through programs, the fees and whatnot, how they make it, and that should be in the form of a public disclosure called your Form 990. And the Form 990 is a form that nonprofits have to complete in lieu of filing taxes. That's one way it can be done. Other ways it can be done is through your annual reports, your annual reports that you give to founders, and foundations, as well as your board members, as well as stakeholders. You can also share information on your website. And this is critical information not only for the government, not only for foundations, but it's also critical for the community to know. Increasingly, neighborhood watchdogs, community leaders want to know what's going on with the nonprofits, right? I know in the community where I'm from, North Lawndale, we have well over 200 nonprofit organizations. And sometimes, while there's incremental change, much of it in the planning and development process, people who live in the community want to see change now. They really, really want to understand what is happening with the money. And individual donors want to know what you're doing with money before they give. People in the community want to know what's happening with your money before they decide whether or not they want to partner with you, whether or not they want to give you a letter of support, and all that good stuff. And another thing that we found, and this is from nonprofit Tech for Good, is that there's a growing dissatisfaction in the work environment among fundraising professionals. They're experiencing burnout. 51% of fundraisers said that they will leave their current nonprofit within the next 2 years. 30% said that they plan to leave fundraising altogether. 55% reported often feeling unappreciated for the long hours that they put in and for the results that they've been able to generate. And then 21% agreed that the negative things about their jobs actually outweighed the positive. So the implications for people who are running nonprofits, who have employees, you have to make sure you create an environment where if you can't necessarily pay people top dollar, you want to create an environment that has flexibility and rewards people in intangibles. We also found that there's a desire among nonprofit leaders to have deeper conversations in safe environments. So this could be in a classroom setting, conference setting, it could be an online community like nonprofit Utopia. But whatever the space you use, you want to make sure that there's an honor system, and it's understood that what goes on in that community, in that conversation amongst those individuals, stays within that circle of friends. And when you have trusting relationships, when people feel comfortable sharing what their issues are, what their problems are, what their challenges are, people are more likely to open up and be willing to help one another. And nonprofit leaders are so craving such an environment. And we also provide that type of environment in the nonprofit Utopia community. As you know, baby boomers are coming of age. Many of us have retired. The last wave of us will be retiring in the next 10 years. So that means that we need to be preparing the next generation of ethical nonprofit leaders to replace us. So millennials have become the largest segment of the workforce, and they are also followed by the Generation Xers, the Zers, and there may even be a Generation Y. I don't know, but I just know that we're aging out. We have a wealth of information that we need to transfer to younger leaders so that there's a seamless transfer of knowledge, seamless transfer of leadership going from one generation to the next so that our communities are not left in the lurch when we leave. In the state of Illinois, we have experienced population loss 5 years in a row, and the trend is not expected to improve anytime soon. We're expected to lose 2 congressional seats as a result of that. And it's also very, very telling to the fact that we're going through the census. We are doing a decennial census April 1st, and it's really, really important that you as a nonprofit reach out to your constituencies and let folks know how important it is to complete that census form, because the number of federal dollars that we get back is dependent very, very heavily on our census numbers. So it's important for us to make sure that we can plan accordingly. Alrighty, so that is all that I had to share. If you have any comments, please feel free to share them in the comment section. I don't have anyone here in Crowdcast with me, but if you have any comments that you want to share on Facebook, please feel free to do so. All righty, it's been great talking to you. Take care. Bye-bye.